For Klynn Scales, life was anything but easy for her family. Growing up with her mother and two brothers in Kansas City, Missouri in the 90s, the family was constantly struggling just to make ends meet. Her mother worked hard to provide for the family, but it never seemed to be enough. Thankfully, there was one moment in Klynn's day that always brought her joy: the opportunity to wave at her favorite police officer who patrolled their street on a daily basis. In that single moment, Klynn could forget her struggles and feel appreciated. However, one day, everything changed. One afternoon, the police officer waited for Klynn for their routine greeting, but she never arrived. It was the first time she missed their daily appointment, and he immediately knew something was terribly wrong. You won't believe what happens. Hello, story lovers. I'm Scott Leffler, and here is Girl waves at cop every day. The day she doesn't, his gut tells him to check her house. Before we move on, make sure you smash that like button, subscribe to our channel, and activate the notifications bell for new amazing videos. The Scales family was struggling. At only 9 years old, Klynn watched as her mother did everything she could to provide for the family. But in the end, it simply wasn't enough. It always seemed like the world was against them, and every time they took one step forward, they'd be forced to take another 3 steps back. It didn't help that they were also living in a very rough neighborhood in Kansas City. Violence was an everyday norm, and drugs were sold regularly on the streets. It was a tough place to live, and not the best situation for a young girl to grow up in. Money was a constant problem. Bills were piling up left and right, and keeping food on the table regularly was hit or miss. There were many nights that Klynn had to go to bed hungry due to the lack of funds for a decent meal. It didn't help that her mother soon turned down a dark path. Tired of struggling, Klynn's mother turned to drugs, and the violence they had worked so hard to keep out of their home was suddenly infecting it. Klynn found herself having to be the light for her brothers, transforming into a mother and caregiver. Thankfully, despite the despair and sadness, Klynn was able to find solace in one person. It was someone she never expected to care, given the area she lived in and her upbringing, but it was a welcome surprise that would make an impact on her life. For Officer Jeff Colvin, patrolling the neighborhoods of Kansas City was a routine he'd grown accustomed to. The area he worked was known for its shady business dealings and high crime rate, which meant Colvin had to stay hyper alert during his patrols. He never knew what unexpected situation he could find himself in. One day, Colvin noticed a young girl in the neighborhood he patrolled. He smiled at her, and he noticed her eyes lit up with a grin. She waved back. It was a simple gesture, but Colvin knew the kids living in that area had it tough. However, he never imagined that one wave would turn into something so much greater. Over the course of the next few weeks, Colvin and Klynn would meet in the same spot, and he would wave while she smiled. It became a daily routine for the girl and officer, one he had no idea brought her so much joy due to her troubled home life. As time continued to pass, Colvin and Klynn would begin to form a bond. They would talk about the weather, her day, as well as her dreams, goals, and aspirations. However, there was a secret Klynn was keeping from him. Despite giving off the appearance of a happy little girl, Klynn was struggling. As her mother's condition and absence from her life grew, the young girl was forced to step up to the plate and become the adult in the family. Colvin had no idea how hard her life was. With her mother rarely home, Klynn had to make sure that there was food to feed her 2 younger brothers. This led her to steal food from the local 7-Eleven. Klynn knew that stealing was wrong, but what other choice did she have? There had been too many times she and her brothers went days without food, and she refused to let him go hungry. Officer Colvin was the one person in Klynn's life she could count on. Every day he would show up at their spot, and he became a role model and very important person in her life. However, one day, everything changed. One sunny afternoon, Colvin arrived at the spot he met Klynn to find her missing. She had never missed their routine get-togethers, and he was surprised that she would suddenly vanish. He'd grown quite fond of the girl and was worried something might have happened to her. Colvin decided to check in on Klynn and drove over to her house. He'd followed her once to make sure she'd gotten home safely, so he knew exactly where it was. However, when he knocked on the door, nobody answered. But then he heard a moan followed by movement. While he wasn't in the habit of breaking into someone's home, Colvin had a terrible gut feeling that something was wrong. After making his way inside, he found Klynn lying on the floor. Pale and shivering, he realized she was sick and immediately called an ambulance. After being rushed to the hospital, Klynn was diagnosed with severe malnourishment. According to the doctors, Colvin had saved her life by finding her because she wouldn't have lasted another day without treatment. Talk about being a guardian angel. Through all the bad situations, I would just picture him saying that he was here for us, and that if we ever needed him, he would be right there, Klynn would later recall. He would always protect us. So those words would come to me during my worst times of my childhood life. After Colvin saved Klynn, she would end up moving out of the area. As the years passed, she never forgot the incredible kindness he'd bestowed upon her when she was 9 years old. He'd given her a second chance at life. He was that one person that I trusted in my life as a kid, Klynn revealed. And after 20 years thinking about him, she knew she had to seek him out. Despite all the time that had passed, Klynn wanted to thank him in person. Unfortunately, Klynn had forgotten his name after all that time. Therefore, she logged onto Facebook and began to search the Kansas City Police Department's page, hoping she might catch a glimpse of him. Thankfully, she was able to reach out to Sergeant Jennifer Jones, who said she would reach out to Officer Colvin on her behalf. Jones emailed Colvin and told him that a woman who claimed to be a little girl he'd helped years ago and that she was looking for the officer she'd waved to daily. Colvin remembered Klynn and was shocked, to say the least. Colvin immediately knew who she was. Despite it being 20 years ago, he'd thought of the girl often. He'd wondered what had happened to her. I always wondered what became of her, Colvin told the local news. It was surprising to connect so many years later. After Colvin confirmed he knew the girl, Jones connected him directly with Klynn. The now grown woman was ecstatic to have found the man who made such a direct impact on her life. I just never thought that this would happen, to find my hero, she revealed. After meeting with Klynn, Colvin was overwhelmed with emotion. Most times we go through our career not realizing we truly helped anybody out, he recalled. That was the case with me, where I wondered if I was even on the right career path. Thankfully, his relationship with Klynn proved he had selected the right path. Klynn revealed that Colvin saving her life had a major impact on her next steps in life. She was able to turn her life around, get her brothers away from her drug-addicted mother, and make a life for herself. Now she was planning to become a police officer, hoping to make the same impact on someone else, like Colvin did for her. After meeting with Colvin, Klynn shared her story on social media, and it immediately went viral, garnering a ton of support for her and Colvin. People were impressed by Colvin's selflessness and kindness, while praising Klynn for rising above her circumstances. Jeff Colvin is not just a hero to me, but my guardian angel also. He was there when I had no one. I want him and every police officer to know that what you do, no matter how big or small, you can make a positive impact in someone's life like he did mine. We imagine that Klynn is going to go on and do amazing things. It's amazing how much of an impact a simple smile and a wave can make. Did you like the story? Check out our channel for more.